Grant Blackley beside me is from SCA in Australia. Welcome to Radio Days.
Thank you.
Now, you just gave a fascinating presentation where you were talking about bringing a service from linear to digital over a time span of how long?
5 years.
5 years. What an enormous transformation to go just linear broadcasting, normally one-way conversation, to something that is diverse, that is two-way communication, and the whole distribution platform is different.
Completely different and highly personalised on the way. So yes, we own and operate 99 radio stations. We've developed 108 podcasts of premium nature. We have all the sporting rights that are live streaming in a digital capacity. We have enormous resource across 105 markets we serve in Australia with news, sport, weather, and things about community. And we've built that out because we think Australians want to hear Australian first stories that are curated, exceptional, and fundamentally talk about themselves. And that could be about Australia, or it could be about their state, or it could be about their town on the way through.
So going from linear to digital in that process, it's not just about the obvious things like the technology changing and the distribution platforms, and because the listener habits are changing, but also the upskilling of staff and how to use these new platforms, these new methods of technology, and how they tell the stories to suit those new platforms.
Well, it all starts off with strategy. Unless you have a strategy, you've got nothing to execute. So therefore we had to find strategy first, execution second. We have what we call 6 chapters in our book, and the 6 chapters talk about content, continuing to serve our linear ambitions, but building out on-demand capability. Secondly, our digital posture. We had a weak digital posture 5 years ago. Now we have an exceptional digital posture because we've invested in a digital transformation. That gave us, I guess, content is king, distribution is queen model in our thing.
Oh, I like that. Content is king, distribution is queen.
Totally. Because, you know, unless you've got a distribution platform...
Who's the prince and the princess and the joker?
No one's the joker, but there's a couple of things. Actually, the joker is probably our innovation, which is our 6th. Unless we innovate and be curious and succeed and fail, you fundamentally never grow and you don't learn. So that's great fun. People, culture, marketing and brands are seriously changed. So we used to market, a number of brands across Australia. With our 99 stations, they're all independent. We now have 2 families, our Triple M and our Hit brands, that have about 50 stations in each. And that's excluding our DAB stations that add about another 50 to 60 stations.
Wow.
Plus,
so you're looking at 150 stations across FM and DAB across Australia.
And we've created 25 at this point, 25 music stations that are continuous curated music stations.
Before I ask you about the app, which I think is fascinating, that what you've done in a stroke of genius, when you talked about sporting rights there for digital and so on and so forth, what is the importance you put, if you could put a percentage on it, of still FM linear broadcast as opposed to digital?
I'll give you an example. Most recently, so we operate in the metro markets, the capital cities. Yeah. We also operate in every region in Australia, township. So we went to buy the cricket rights, which Australians love their cricket. Yeah. Sometimes we do all right in it. But people, it's an appointment viewing, it's a passion, or appointment listening, I should say, and it's a passion subject matter. We went to buy the rights. We could only buy the metro rights because they'd sold the regional rights to another player.
So you could just buy for the cities?
Only for the cities. So we bought the broadcast rights for the cities, and we created and curated and broadcast those one-to-many. However, we also bought the national streaming rights for listener, which no one owned.
Yes.
So then what we did was we used our network, because we also own 105 TV stations across the regions, and we promoted. And what happened?
You drove the listeners there.
Everyone went there because there was no other place to go.
So you kind of did a trick. It was like a clever...
I wouldn't call it a trick, but I'd call it... we had curiosity. We were intuitive about where we wanted to be. But if we couldn't buy the broadcast rights one-to-many, we had to somehow get it with equal favour to the regional. Yes. It is 40% of the population of Australia. So therefore, promoting on our stations that we owned in the regional markets, the only place you can get it is download this app and we'll be there for your sport. Yes. They all download the app. And that was their listening experience.
While other radio stations go to social media and digital to say, hey, this big sporting event is on, they don't really say listen on their app, and even if they have the digital streaming rights, they say go to FM if they have it on FM,
Yes.
listen to it there, or tune in here and listen to it, whereas you were doing the opposite.
We did the opposite, because the behaviours of people after 20 years of having sport,
Yes.
and key sport on our Triple M network, there's a habit there that had already formed. We weren't growing the audience necessarily. It might grow, but fundamentally it was a loyal,
Changing a habit.
large-scale
Yes.
audience. However, when you went out to play and you didn't have a radio in a traditional sense with you,
Yes.
but you had your mobile, you had your smart speaker, whatever the case might be, you could then ask for it, so you could listen to it at any point, any time, any place.
And the national streaming rights a bit cheaper than the on-air rights as well. So
I wouldn't say that.
really not the same, around the same. It was,
No, we won't go into it, but
Don't go
we
into
think
it.
it's good for both parties. Let's put it
Okay,
that way.
He's a smart guy. He's a smart guy. Say nothing. So the other thing I want to ask you about before I let you go, because I think it's fascinating. You said you've got around 150 radio stations across FM and DAB. Each one of them traditionally would have their own app to serve their audience to listen and so on and so forth.
Yes.
But what you did, rather than having all these different apps, put them all in one app where people can get
In
it
one
all.
ecosystem, and the ecosystem is named Listener. So the ecosystem houses all of our content. So it's scaled, it's simple, it can fit on the front page of your mobile, it can fit on the dashboard of your car, and we've facilitated that on the way through. If we were to try and get 99 apps on the front page of any of those
It'd be
devices,
impossible.
it can't
Yeah.
can't happen. And also the digital giants that sit out there who govern the way in which we act with them
Yes.
would never allow it.
They wouldn't push
So
that.
therefore we had to come up with a scaled, simplistic model that fundamentally nurtured an outcome with signed-in users, first-party data that was simple for consumers. It's not only simple for consumers, it's simple for our customer base, which is actually our advertisers. So it works for both parties.
That's fantastic. And as we were saying beforehand, someone who could be a big fan of one of your heavy metal stations or country stations,
Yes.
who would never normally listen to the classical station in another part of the country, may stumble across it on the app, and you've
So
got
what
another
they're
listen.
finding, they're coming into the House of Listener.
The House of
They're
Listener.
The House of Listener. They're signing in. We're onboarding them with all their preferences so we can personalise not only the content but the commercials that appeal to that particular person. And AI is developing that capability. And they're walking in, and some people hate radio, but they're walking in for our podcasts. And we've got 108 of them, and they're going to our podcast room. They're consuming all that podcasting. They're sticking their head out in the hallway and they're going, what's over there? And they're finding radio.
And they're
And they're
listening to
finding radio again or for the first time.
Wow.
And they're listening to more. And of course there's a very rowdy room just down the hallway,
Yeah.
which is the sports room.
Yeah.
And they're finding that before they find the news and the room, and then they find the international room, which has got David Attenborough from the BBC.
There you go.
So they're in the House of Listener. They're circulating and oscillating through that ecosystem, and they're spending more and more time within our ecosystem.
Is the bar further down the hallway, or where do you get that?
The bar is yet to be introduced. We've been very focused, laser focused in fact, but one is being built, I can assure
The bar
you.
is being built. Well, content is king, distribution is queen. This man certainly is not the Joker. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.